Hi, my name is Brian Foster, and I'm a doctoral candidate at the University of California, Pennsylvania. This is the third in a series of lectures I've given on diabetes and exercise, and this one is entitled Exercise with Nutrition and Medication in Mind. So, what I'd like to do today is to go over the benefits of exercise and recall the general recommendations for exercise. Those are things we've gone over before, but they are important to review. I want to discuss the nutritional needs for exercise based on your exercise related goals because your nutrition will differ depending on what you want out of your exercise. We're going to talk about the medication concerns around exercise. Then I'm going to list the tools that might be beneficial for you if you're trying to monitor your exercise, your nutrition, and your medication. So before we get started, I do want to say that this information, while factual, is really for informational purposes only. If you get something out of this lecture, I'm very happy to hear that, but I would like you to discuss it with your healthcare provider before actually using. So the benefits of physical activity. I'm not going to go over the entire list here. You can certainly read it for yourself. But what I want to emphasize here is a lot of the things that you see in this list are reasons why you might take your medications. Reason why you might take a statin or a beta blocker or an ACE inhibitor. What I also want to point out is that these same kinds of things can happen whenever we exercise. These are all benefits of physical activity. One of the great things about physical activity is that if you engage in it regularly, along the recommended amounts, you may be able to reduce or even eliminate some of the medications you take. Now, I don't want to make a blanket statement of that and say that that's going to happen for everybody, but that we find that does happen with a lot of individuals who engage in regular physical activity. So, how much exercise do you actually need? Well, the national recommendations say that you need at least 150 minutes of moderate activity and 2 days of muscle strengthening that should be on non-consecutive days. Right? Now, the 150 minutes you can break up in any way that you want. Recommendations are somewhere between 4 to 6 days a week should have exercise. So you could do 5 days of 30 minutes or 6 days of 25 minutes. You can break it up however you want as long as you're getting those 150 minutes per week. And again, with the muscle strengthening, that's really anything where you're working your muscles, you're working them a little harder than normal. And again, it has to be on 2 non-consecutive days. So examples of aerobic activity. And you see the list here, there's a lot more than that. But these are just some of the examples that we could have for aerobic activity. Now, I wanted to make a kind of a sample exercise for the week. So what you could do, for what you would do each day of the week. So on Monday, you'd walk for 30 minutes around in the neighborhood with a neighbor. Tuesday, 20 minutes of strength exercises at the Y. Wednesday, you might walk at the Y and then meet with a group for coffee. Thursday, 20 minutes of strength exercises at the Y again. Friday, bicycle riding on the Chester County Trail. Saturday, walk around for 60 minutes at the local park. And then on Sunday, you might do gardening. So the nutrients you need for exercise. The main nutrients that you need are carbohydrate, fat, protein, and water. Okay, and that's not to minimize minerals and vitamins. They are very important. Okay, but when we're talking about the macronutrients, the things that we need, the things that can provide energy for exercise, most of the time we're talking about carbs, but to some extent it also includes proteins and fats. The information that I put here, you'll see in each circle, there's a circle for carbs, a circle for protein, and a circle for fats. And then underneath it, you'll see examples of each one. Now, what I do want to point out is that you should see kind of an overlap between carbs and protein, and then another overlap between protein and fats. And the information in those kind of overlaps give you an example of each. Okay, so the idea of chickpeas are both a carb and a protein. Right? And something that's dairy could be an example of both a protein and a fat. Right? When we're talking about trying to get in a certain number of macronutrients for exercise, we can kind of think of this list as well as think of things that may overlap. All right. I mentioned water is the last on that list, and water is important Now, for aerobic activities lasting 30 to 60 minutes, water is probably enough. You don't necessarily need to drink Gatorade. Okay? If it's longer than 60 minutes, then yeah, you might consider Gatorade or actually G2 is a great drink because it's going to have vitamins and minerals in it, kind of electrolytes, without all the additional calories that you might not want. All right? And you do want to make sure that you drink before, during, and after your activity. What I always say is that if you're actually thirsty, okay, then you've already passed the point where you need water. So considerations in your nutrition needs, right? The things that I think are going to make a big difference for us are either the individual goals that you have, so the reasons why you're exercising, and then your blood glucose. First, I'd like you to decide what your goals for exercise are. Right? Everybody's exercising for a different reason, but I really think it's important that you decide why you're exercising because that may help determine what nutritional needs you're going to have. All right. Now here I just gave a couple of examples, and they can range. All right, everything from weight loss to using exercise equipment that you have at home to keeping up with your kids or your grandkids. Right. So first decide what it is that you want. All right. Now for most individual goals, okay, so the last slide, 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity a week and 2 days of strength related work are really all you would need for most of the goals that you had on that page. All right. Now, for 30 minutes of activity, you really don't need to take in any extra nutrition. Right. So you don't necessarily need to power bar for 30 minutes of activity. All right. Now, if the activity is longer than 30 minutes, yes, a small amount of carbohydrate might be needed. And when I say small, something that's probably no more than 15 grams of carbohydrate. Right? Now, a good way to ensure recovery is to consume something with carbohydrates and a small amount of protein within 30 minutes after exercise. So I'm really not concerned so much as what you're having before as what you're having after. Because the idea is what you're taking in after is going to help replenish your body for the next day's activity. Right? Now, when goals involve weight loss, it is a little bit different. Right? You are probably going to need to focus on more than 150 minutes per week of aerobic activity. And actually, the recommendations state somewhere between 150 to 300 minutes of activity per week. Right? Now, what you eat after your exercise session shouldn't be eliminated. Okay, so that recovery meal you're going to have, you don't want to decrease that. But what you do want to do is decrease the overall number of calories you have over the course of the day. Okay, so again, it's very important that you have something to eat after you exercise. Right, and if you plan on losing weight, what you have to plan on doing is reducing the total amount of calories that you're taking in for the day. And for more information on that, what I would want you to do is to reach out to one of the dietitians here at Chester County Hospital. All right. So examples of recovery bar meals. This is just a short list, okay, of examples of things that I came up with that would have some carbohydrates and a small amount of protein. What you'll also notice is down near the end, you'll see that they actually take the form of meals, and that's okay. You could exercise, before your lunch or before your evening meal. Right? Now, when your goals involve your blood glucose, right, the goal should really be to keep the exercise and keep your blood glucose as close to the range as provided by your healthcare provider. Right? Now, that's something individual. I can't give that to you. But the idea is if your healthcare provider wanted you to stay between 120 and 150 when you exercise, that's going to be your goal. Right? Now, the carbohydrate that you take in, it's going to vary a little bit, and it's really going to depend on insulin regimens, timing of exercise, the type of activity, but it's also going to depend on, let me just move that out of the way so it's not in the way. It's also going to depend greatly on your starting blood glucose levels. Oh, I'll move back. Okay, so what to eat based on your blood sugar or your blood glucose. All right, so if your blood glucose is below 90, right, you should really consume 15 to 30 grams of fast-acting carbohydrate prior to the start of exercise. Now, if your blood sugar is between 90 and 150, you could probably have some carbohydrate at the onset of most exercise, depending on the type of exercise and depending on how long it is. Right? Now, if your blood sugar is between 150 and 250, you probably want to delay consumption of carbohydrate until your blood glucose is below 150. And again, these are just basic guidelines. Really, it's dependent on what you and your healthcare provider agree to. All right. So fast acting and versus medium acting carbs. I had mentioned in an earlier slide that if your blood sugar was below 90, you would probably want to have 15 to 30 grams of fast acting carbs. So some people ask, well, what is fast acting? Fast acting would be glucose tablets, glucose drinks, Gatorade would be an example, jellies, sweets, hard candy, something like that would be fast acting. Medium acting carbs might have just the same amount of carbs in them. They just take a little longer for your body to digest. Okay, and not something you would want to have if you're trying to bring your blood sugar up quickly. Right. So medium acting carbs, that would be something like bread, pasta, potatoes, breakfast, cereal, and couscous. Right. Now those would be great examples of having carbohydrates after your activity, not necessarily before. Okay. So how medication affects exercise? Medications are a concern if they lower your blood glucose, and that could be through insulin that you're taking, okay? Or it could be for some oral medications. All right, sulfonylureas are a type of oral medication that will lower your blood sugar. Right now, what I have listed here are just some of the different brand names of that type of medication. But again, if you take insulin or if you take this type of oral medication, it is something that you would want to talk to your doctor about because they could lower your blood glucose while you're exercising. So the best recommendation I can make here is to discuss it with your healthcare provider. They're really the ones that can give you an idea of how to gauge your exercise around your insulin use or your oral medications. So tools to use for exercise, nutrition, and medication. Right? Most often what I look at are phone apps, blood glucose monitoring, or continuous glucose monitoring. So a phone app, I was going to just give you a couple that I like. The first one is called My Sugar. And you'll see on the screen here, it's a picture of someone's phone. And you'll see a couple different shapes. You could see a couple different colors. All right. Now they are going to represent diet, medications, carbohydrate intake, maybe blood glucose. But the idea is once you understand these colors and these symbols, you can kind of see it, you can kind of get a graph of what's going on day to day. So if you were trying to see how your blood sugar responds to exercise, okay, tracking it through this would give you a better idea as opposed to just from one day as opposed to 3, 4, or 5 days. Right? And again, on this one, you'll see that you can get daily, weekly, and monthly reports that you can share with your healthcare provider. So this one is called the Glucose Tracker and Diabetic Diary. We could have come up with a better name, but that's what we have. So for this particular one, it is similar to the last, but in this sense, you're going to add tags to each record. Okay, so before meals, after meals, in the morning, evening, before exercise, after exercise. And again, it's that same idea. You can kind of observe trends of your blood sugar and decide how to use that information the next time you do it. So if you are going to use a diabetes app, and I only listed 2 of them, there's plenty of them out there that are great. You want to make sure that you can record your activity, your meals, and your medication. Right? And with those 3 things, you want to make sure it has the ability to help you look at patterns, to help you make decisions. So blood glucose monitoring. Monitoring should serve the function of providing some kind of information that you can act on. And the only real way to do that is to take your blood sugar before and after you exercise. Right? Before you exercise, because you need to know whether you're actually going to need to take fast-acting carbohydrates or whether you're going to hold off. And the reason why you want to test your blood sugar after you exercise, for the same reasons. You need to know if your blood sugar is low or whether you need to eat something, a fast-acting carbohydrate. Mm-hmm. So testing can really occur both before and after activity to get the most out of it. Now, the last tool I was going to mention was continuous glucose monitoring. Right? This is something that typically only type 1 diabetics you would use, but it's actually something that individuals with type 2 are beginning to use more often as well. Right? This is something that gives you pattern recognition. Right? You'll see on the screen here, you'll see a couple dots, which might represent blood sugars, but you also see a wavy line that kind of connects those dots. Right? And the idea here is it's giving you a picture of what's happening with your blood sugar every 5 minutes or every 15 minutes. With all these monitors, it gives you frequent information, so it lets you know where your blood sugar is headed, whether it's going up, whether it's going down, or whether it's staying stable. And again, this kind of information is really helpful if you're trying to determine how your body is responding to exercise. So for more information, these were just four places that I thought you could go. I've been to all four of them, and you can find lots of great information on exercise and how to kind of combine your medication, your exercise, and the food that you're eating. So in conclusion, I want you to know that exercise plays an important role in our health. Right? What we eat makes a difference in your ability to exercise, but a lot of it should really focus on what your exercise-related goals are or what your blood sugars are. Okay? Medications are also going to play a role in your exercise regimen, and that is something you want to discuss with your healthcare provider. Okay? And then you also want to have a tool to monitor your exercise, your nutrition, and your medication. You want to make sure that it gives you the ability to track your progress and then to be able to use it for future decision making. Thank you so much. Have a great day.